Take off one shoe, then the other, and put your bare foot on the grass. Do not perform it like a wellness ritual. Do not make it mystical. Do not try to feel changed. Just let the skin of your foot meet the uneven surface beneath you. Notice the first confusion. The grass is not one texture. It is 100 small interruptions. One blade bends under your heel, another presses into the soft pad below your big toe. A cold thread of moisture touches one point, then disappears. Your foot wants to flatten, then your toes want to grip. Your ankle makes small corrections before you decide to correct anything. Stay there. Let your weight settle through the sole, not through a shoe, not through foam, not through a manufactured layer designed to make the world smooth, through skin, through pressure, through tiny changes in temperature, through the strange fact that the ground is never perfectly still when your body is alive on top of it. Now shift your weight slightly forward, not enough to step, just enough for the ball of your foot to receive more of you. You may feel the grass sharpen under the front of the foot. You may feel the arch wake up like a dim room receiving light. You may feel nothing dramatic at all. That is fine. Your body does not need drama to begin measuring. The gesture is almost embarrassing in its simplicity. A foot, a patch of grass, a few seconds of contact. And yet your nervous system has already started asking questions that your conscious mind cannot hear. Where is the ground soft? Where is it sloped? Where is your weight leaking to one side? How much force is coming back? How much friction is available? Is this surface safe? Is your body upright? Do you need to tighten? Can you release? You are not thinking those questions, your skin is. Something strange happens when a small part of your body touches the living ground. The gesture looks primitive, almost childish, as if nothing serious could be happening there. You are not lifting weights. You are not doing breath work. You are not meditating in a disciplined posture. You are simply letting the underside of your foot touch grass. But the body does not classify a gesture by how impressive it looks. It classifies it by how much information enters. A screen gives your eyes a flat rectangle. A chair gives your hips a fixed angle. A shoe gives your foot a filtered version of the planet. Most of the day, your body is not living in the world. It is living inside interfaces. Smooth floor, cushioned sole, padded seat, polished desk, climate-controlled air, predictable surfaces. The modern environment does not merely protect you from discomfort. It removes the small irregularities your nervous system evolved to read. Then grass breaks the pattern. Grass is unstable, but not dangerous. Cool, but not painful. Uneven, but not chaotic. It gives your body a stream of small, low-stakes errors. Your ankle tilts, your toes adjust, your calf listens, your spine makes a correction so small you never name it. The movement is quiet. The consequence is not. Because your body is not a brain carried by bones, it is a sensing surface stretched over a moving organism. Touch is not decoration. Touch is measurement. And the foot is not merely the thing at the end of the leg. It is one of the places where the world enters you before it becomes thought. This is why the gesture feels disproportionate. You can stand on grass for less than a minute and feel slightly more present, slightly less abstract, slightly less trapped behind your forehead. Not cured, not transformed, just returned by 1 degree to the place where your body already is. So the question is not why touching grass feels grounding. The question is why a body built from the ground ever learned to live as if the ground was optional. Before touching grass does anything, you have to understand what the sole of your foot actually is. Most people think of the sole as tough skin, a biological shoe, a thick layer built to tolerate friction, heat, cold, and pressure. That is true, but it is only the crudest version of the truth. The sole is not a slab. It is a sensory instrument hidden inside a callus. Under the skin of your foot are mechanoreceptors, pressure detectors that turn deformation into electricity, which means they translate the bend of tissue into signals your spinal cord and brain can use. The word sounds technical, So feel it this way. When one blade of grass presses into your skin, your foot does not feel an object. It feels the shape of its own skin being changed. That distinction matters. Touch is not the world entering you directly. Touch is your body noticing itself being altered by the world. The grass bends, your skin dents. A nerve ending opens tiny ion channels, microscopic gates that let charged particles move. The movement becomes a signal. The signal travels upward. The brain receives not a picture of grass, but a map of pressure, stretch, temperature, and timing. Your foot sole contains several classes of these sensors. Slowly adapting receptors continue firing while pressure remains, like a guard who keeps reporting that someone is still leaning on the gate. Rapidly adapting receptors respond to change, vibration, slip, and movement, like an alarm that cares less about what is there and more about what just shifted. Together, they give your nervous system a living estimate of the ground. This is why a flat floor is not neutral. It is information poor. A flat floor repeats itself. Grass does not. Grass gives the foot a different pressure map every second. A blade under the heel, a softer pocket under the arch, a slight coldness between two toes, a tiny loss of grip as moisture touches skin. These variations are not distractions from balance. They are the raw material of balance. In 2002, Paul M. Kennedy and J. Timothy Inglis at the University of British Columbia published a detailed study in the Journal of Physiology on glabrous cutaneous receptors in the human foot sole. Glabrous means hairless skin, the kind on your palms and the soles of your feet, skin designed less for display and more for contact. They recorded how receptors in the sole behave and showed that the foot is not just a passive platform. The receptors of the sole appear organized for stance and movement, for the constant task of keeping you upright in a world that is never perfectly even. A fact most people never hear is that your balance is not mainly a muscular decision. You do not stand by commanding yourself to stand. You stand because streams of sensory information keep arriving quickly enough for your body to correct falling before falling becomes visible. Vision helps. The inner ear helps. Muscles and joints help. But the sole contributes a direct report from the boundary between you and the surface. Your foot is like the pressure sensor array under an industrial robot. A robot walking over unpredictable terrain needs more than motors. It needs feedback from the ground. If the surface tilts, if friction changes, if a footpad compresses differently than expected, the machine must update its next movement. Without that feedback, the strongest machine becomes clumsy. Your body solves this problem without a laboratory. It puts sensors in skin. The common belief is that shoes support the foot because they make the ground easier. The deeper truth is more complicated. Shoes can protect, cushion, and help many people move safely, especially when pain, injury, extreme temperatures, or hazardous surfaces are involved. But every layer also filters. It reduces the sharpness of the conversation between skin and surface. A thick sole does not only soften impact, it also edits reality. Grass, for a few seconds, removes the editor. When your bare foot touches it, the body receives a terrain signal that is richer than tile, richer than carpet, richer than the rubber outsole that carried you through most of the day. The sole is asked to become what it was built to be, not a dead base under the body, but a living interface. The skin of the foot is thick because the world is rough, but it is innovated because the world is meaningful. That is the hidden design. Protection without numbness, toughness without silence. And when you stand on grass, you are using both. If this already feels like a different kind of explanation, stay with it. This channel is built around tiny gestures that your body treats as serious information. If you want more of these, subscribe and leave a like so this kind of slower science can keep reaching people who are tired of shallow advice. The first layer begins almost instantly. The moment grass presses into your sole, the skin deforms, Mechanoreceptors embedded in the tissue respond to that deformation. Their membranes stretch. Ion channels open. Electrical signals begin moving along sensory fibers toward the spinal cord. In plain feeling, this is the tiny spark of contact before you have a story about it. Some of those signals are fast. They travel through myelinated fibers, nerve cables wrapped in insulation, which means the message can move rapidly and precisely. The sensory word is sharpness, not pain, but definition. Your body knows where the pressure is, where it changed, and whether the surface is stable enough to trust. This is the millisecond layer. Grass becomes geometry. Your brain is not first asking whether the gesture is good for you. It is asking where you are. The foot sends pressure information upward. The spinal cord integrates reflexive adjustments. The cerebellum, the coordination system at the back of the brain, compares intended position with incoming sensory correction. The vestibular system, the inner ear balance apparatus that feels gravity and acceleration as bodily orientation, joins the calculation. The result is not a thought, it is a posture. A tiny sway appears. Then a tiny correction. Your toes may spread, the arch may stiffen slightly. The calf may become alert. The muscles around the ankle may contract in patterns too subtle for your attention. You call this standing still. Your nervous system calls it continuous negotiation. The second layer unfolds over seconds to minutes. As the soul keeps receiving uneven pressure, the nervous system begins to update its estimate of safety. This is not emotional safety in the abstract. It is mechanical safety. Can the body predict the surface? Can the ankle correct in time? Is the load distributed? Are you about to slip? When the answers become reliable enough, the system can reduce unnecessary guarding. Guarding is the quiet tension you carry when your body expects instability. You may feel it as clenched toes, tight calves, shallow breathing, a jaw that does not fully let go, a torso that remains slightly braced even when nothing is threatening you. The body uses tension as insurance, but insurance has a metabolic cost. It consumes attention, oxygen, glucose, and the feeling of ease. Touching grass can give the lower nervous system a stream of trustworthy variability, not a blank surface, not a threatening surface, a readable surface. This matters because the body calms not when nothing happens, but when what happens can be predicted. Here the comparison with pharmacology becomes useful, not because touching grass acts like a drug, but because both drugs and sensory input can change the state of a system by changing signals. A sedative compound may influence receptor activity in the brain to reduce excitability. A pain-relieving cream may alter local nerve signaling. The body, however, has another route. It can change its own tone through incoming sensory information. A safe, textured surface under the foot is not a chemical molecule, but it is still a signal. It tells the spinal cord, cerebellum, and autonomic networks that the organism is in contact with a stable world. The industry sells stability as products: cushioned shoes, posture devices, ergonomic mats, vibration platforms, balance boards, recovery tools. Some of them can be useful, but the body also runs a free version of this technology every time skin meets a complex natural surface. Grass is a low-resolution balance board grown out of soil. It does not need a battery. It does not need an app. It gives you irregularity, friction, temperature, and softness in one biological interface. Then comes the third layer, the one most people do not expect. The foot does not only speak to balance, it participates in the whole state of the organism. Posture changes breathing. Breathing changes heart rhythm. Heart rhythm is tied to autonomic tone, the balance between sympathetic activation, which feels like readiness, and parasympathetic regulation, which feels like the ability to settle. The surface under your foot can therefore influence more than the foot. Not magically, mechanically. If your stance becomes less guarded, your respiratory muscles can soften. If your breathing deepens slightly, carbon dioxide regulation changes. If the diaphragm moves more freely, pressure shifts through the abdomen and chest. If the nervous system receives enough signals that the environment is readable, it may reduce the background command to brace. The result may feel like a small drop in internal noise. This is why people often misname the effect. They say touching grass clears the mind, but the mind may not be the first thing being cleared. The body may be reducing the amount of threat-like prediction it is generating from a day spent on flat surfaces, in seated postures, under visual overload, with almost no skin-level contact with the natural world. In 2019, Mary Carroll Hunter and colleagues at the University of Michigan studied what they called nature experiences and measured changes in salivary cortisol and alpha amylase, two biomarkers connected to stress physiology. The study was not about bare feet specifically, and that distinction matters. It was about spending time in nature. But it supports a larger point. The nervous system does not treat natural environments as neutral wallpaper. They can measurably shift physiological stress markers over ordinary timescales. Roger Ulrich's famous 1984 study in Science showed another version of the same principle from a different angle. Patients recovering from gallbladder surgery who had a window view of trees had better recovery-related outcomes than matched patients facing a brick wall. Again, this does not mean grass cures anything. It means the human body has measurable responses to natural information, even when the contact is only visual. Touching grass adds another channel. Vision sees green, skin receives ground, balance receives variation, temperature receptors detect coolness, proprioception, the body's sense of where its parts are, receives new joint and muscle feedback as the foot adapts. In sensory terms, the gesture is not one thing. It is a small orchestra. And Stephen Hawking belongs in this story for a reason that is easy to misunderstand. Not because he left instructions about bare feet, or because grass had some secret role in his physics. That would be sentimental and false. Hawking matters here because his life made a brutal distinction visible. The body can become restricted, but the relationship between a person and the universe does not have to collapse into restriction. He understood, perhaps more sharply than almost anyone, that human existence is not reducible to the limits of movement. A body can lose functions and still remain in contact with enormity through attention, curiosity, and orientation. For most of us, the tragedy is smaller and stranger. We still have movement, but we surrender contact. We can walk, yet we walk insulated. We can stand, yet we stand on dead surfaces. We can feel, yet we route the day through glass. Touching grass is not an attempt to imitate Hawking. It is a reminder of something his life made impossible to ignore. The physical universe is not an idea you admire from a distance. It is the condition you are already inside. The grass under your foot is not a symbol first. It is data. Modern life removes this data gradually enough that you stop noticing its absence. You wake up and put your feet on flooring that was designed to be level. You slide into shoes designed to minimize surprise. You sit in a chair that holds your hips at an angle your ancestors rarely held for entire days. You move through sidewalks, elevators, cars, offices, supermarkets, gyms, and bedrooms where the ground has been standardized. Your feet travel through the day like diplomats behind tinted glass. Present, but not exposed. At first, nothing seems wrong. Then the symptoms appear under other names. You say your mind feels foggy. But part of the fog may be sensory monotony, the dulling that happens when the body receives too much visual information and too little tactile variation. You say your body feels tense, but part of the tension may be unused balance circuitry, systems built for micro-adjustment now trapped between chair and flat floor. You say you feel disconnected. But disconnection is not only emotional, it can be literal. Fewer moments where skin, pressure, temperature, and terrain remind the nervous system where the organism ends and the world begins. Over weeks and months, the absence of varied ground contact can contribute to a quieter narrowing. The toes stop spreading as often. The ankle receives fewer natural challenges. The calf holds patterns instead of negotiating surfaces. The lower back may take over jobs the foot and ankle should have shared. The eyes may become dominant, not because vision is bad, but because the other channels are underfed. A body that receives mostly visual input starts to live forward and upward, toward screens and plans and imagined problems. A body that receives pressure through the feet is pulled downward into the present, not spiritually downward, neurologically downward, into load, into contact, into the fact that gravity is happening now. This is the scale of time that matters. One barefoot contact is a signal. Daily contact becomes a repeated reminder. Not enough to override injury, illness, sleep debt, chronic stress, or the need for medical care, but enough to ask the system, again and again, to remember that it is not only a thinking machine, it is a balancing animal. The common belief is that rest means removing stimulation. The mechanism rewrites it. Sometimes rest begins when the body finally receives the right kind of stimulation. That is the reformulation. Not more noise. Better signal. A couch can rest your muscles while leaving your nervous system hungry. A phone can distract your mind while keeping your body braced. A bed can hold you still while your feet go another day without texture. But a minute on grass gives the body a paradoxical form of rest. Not emptiness, but simple contact. The kind of contact that asks enough from you to bring you back, and not so much that it overwhelms you. This is why the gesture matters most for people who think they do not need it. The more abstract your day becomes, the more your body depends on tiny acts of re-entry. If your work happens in tabs, messages, documents, calls, edits, numbers, and invisible deadlines, your nervous system can spend hours responding to threats that have no temperature, no weight, no smell, no surface. The body is mobilized for a world it cannot touch. Grass gives the threat system an old kind of evidence. Here is ground, here is friction, here is coolness, here is your weight, here is the edge of your foot, here is the body, not as a problem to optimize, but as a living boundary in contact with something older than the room you built around it. The absence of this gesture does not create one dramatic disease. That would be too simple. It creates a small poverty of feedback. And the body, when deprived of feedback, does what every control system does. It guesses harder. Before the next layer, write one concrete detail in the comments. When was the last time your barefoot touched real ground, grass, soil, sand, stone, anything not manufactured? Not whether you believe in this, just the last place you remember. The gesture expands beyond the foot because the foot was never isolated. When grass touches your soul, the immediate conversation is cutaneous, meaning skin-based, which feels like pressure, texture, coolness, and friction. But the next conversation is proprioceptive, meaning position-based, which feels like the body quietly knowing where your joints are without looking. The ankle angles, the toes spread. The knee adjusts. The hip receives a different line of force. The spine responds to the changed base. A tiny event at the sole becomes a whole-body update. This is not poetic exaggeration. This is how upright animals work. Standing on two legs is mechanically strange. Your body is a tall, unstable structure balanced over two relatively small bases. If an engineer built a tower with your proportions, the foundation sensors would matter enormously. The body solves that instability with constant feedback. The ground is part of the posture. Remove the ground signal, flatten it, cushion it, silence it, and the body can still function, but it must rely more heavily on other systems. Vision begins doing extra work. The neck stiffens to stabilize the head. The jaw may clench during concentration. The breath may become shallower when posture is held by effort instead of distributed feedback. A simple lack of foot input can echo upward through systems that seem unrelated. Then there is the unexpected system. Attention. Attention is not only a mental spotlight. It is partly the brain's decision about which sensory signals deserve priority. Screens hijack attention because they are bright, fast, symbolic, and socially loaded. Grass reclaims attention differently. It does not shout. It gives low-intensity complexity. The brain does not need to decode language, status, danger, or performance. It needs to feel small changes under the body. This can shift attention from narrative to sensation, from future simulation to present measurement. That shift is not a cure for anxiety, depression, trauma, or exhaustion. It is not therapy. It is not a substitute for care. But it is a change in input architecture. You cannot expect the nervous system to run on abstract alarms all day and then instantly become embodied at night. The system needs bridges. Touch is one of the oldest bridges. Evolution explains why. For most of human history, the ground was not a design element. It was an active source of information. Soil, roots, stones, slopes, mud, dry grass, wet grass, cold ground, hot ground, unstable ground. Your ancestors did not need to schedule sensory variation. It was built into walking. The foot touched complexity constantly. The body learned from the ground while hunting, gathering, carrying, hiding, climbing, resting, and migrating. The modern world changed this with extraordinary speed. From an evolutionary perspective, standardized ground is new. Shoes are not new in all forms, but heavily cushioned, consistently insulating footwear combined with smooth urban surfaces and long-seated days is very new. Your nervous system still carries old expectations. It expects varied loading. It expects tactile maps. It expects the foot to act as a sensory organ, not just a protected stump inside a container. This is why touching grass should not be framed as a health hack. A hack is something clever added to a system. This is closer to a baseline, not a miracle. A baseline, a small restoration of information the organism was built to receive without needing permission. The baseline matters because the body is not optimized by comfort alone. Too much threat damages, too much load breaks, too much stress exhausts, but too little meaningful signal also weakens regulation. Bones respond to load. Muscles respond to use. Balance responds to challenge. Attention responds to sensory relevance. The organism is not a fragile object that must be protected from all friction. It is an adaptive system that needs the right amount of contact. Grass gives contact without conquest. You do not have to dominate it. You do not have to perform. You stand, and the surface answers. The answer is mild enough to be safe for most people when the area is clean and the body is capable, but rich enough to be meaningful. For people with neuropathy, wounds, high fall risk, severe allergies, mobility limitations, or medical concerns, the protocol must change. The principle remains: safe texture, real contact, body-level information. The surface can be grass under a hand, a textured mat, a towel with uneven folds, a cool stone held carefully, soil touched with fingers. The foot is powerful, but the point is not heroism. The point is contact. This is the larger system hidden inside the gesture. You are not just touching grass. You are giving the nervous system a non-verbal argument against disembodiment. The argument is simple. You are here, not in the comment section, not in tomorrow's problem, not in the unfinished task, here, where weight presses down and the ground presses back. Use the gesture with the seriousness of something small. Choose a patch of grass that is safe, clean, and free from sharp objects, chemicals, animal waste, or insects you need to avoid. The dose does not need to be heroic. Start with 60 seconds. That is enough time for the skin to stop being surprised and for posture to begin negotiating. If you can do 2 to 5 minutes, do that. If you can do 20 minutes in a calm, natural setting, the broader nature exposure research suggests that this timescale can be physiologically meaningful for stress markers, but the minimum gesture begins much smaller. Stand with both feet hip-width apart. Let the toes point mostly forward, not because there is one perfect posture, but because the foot can receive pressure more evenly when it is not twisted into performance. Let the knees stay soft. A locked knee turns the leg into a rigid pole and pushes balance work upward. A soft knee lets the ankle and foot make small corrections. Let the jaw unclench. The jaw is not part of the grass, but it is part of the same organism. Then observe one thing only. Sway. Do not try to eliminate it. Sway is not failure. Sway is the signature of a living balance system. If you feel tiny movement forward, backward, or side to side, the mechanism is active. Your foot is sampling pressure. Your ankle is adjusting. Your vestibular system is updating. Your muscles are not frozen. They are listening. After 30 seconds, shift your weight slightly toward the front of the feet, then back toward the heels. Slowly. The purpose is not exercise. It is contrast. The mechanoreceptors in the sole respond to pressure and change, so you give them change gentle enough to read. Feel how the grass under the ball of the foot is different from the grass under the heel. Feel how the arch does not touch the same way. Feel how the toes want to participate. If standing is difficult, sit and place the bare feet on grass without loading all your weight. If that is not possible, touch grass with your hand. The palm has its own glabrous skin, another hairless sensory surface built for contact. Let the fingers move slowly through the blades. The mechanism shifts from stance to tactile attention, but the principle remains. Skin receiving natural irregularity. If you have reduced sensation in the feet, diabetes-related neuropathy, circulation problems, open cuts, immune concerns, severe balance issues, or any condition that makes barefoot outdoor contact risky, do not force the barefoot version. Use a safe substitute, a textured towel under supervision, a clean natural object in the hand, a seated position. Shoes on grass with slow attention to pressure through the sole. The gesture should never become a test of toughness. There are errors that weaken the effect. The first is scrolling while doing it. If your eyes are inside a phone, the foot still receives input, but attention remains captured by symbols. The nervous system can process unattended signals, but the full re-entry depends on letting sensation become noticeable. Put the phone away for the minute. The second error is turning the gesture into a claim. If you stand there demanding calm, you convert contact into performance. The body does not need you to believe anything. It needs you to receive information. Let the grass be grass. The third error is rushing the surface. Walking quickly across a lawn gives stimulation, but standing gives measurement. Walking asks the body to move through information. Standing asks it to study information. Both can be useful. For this protocol, begin with standing. The fourth error is choosing a surface that creates threat. If the grass is dirty, sharp, too cold, too hot, or unsafe, the body will guard, and guarding is the opposite of the signal you are trying to provide. Safety is not softness. Safety is readability without alarm. The fifth error is expecting the mind to narrate the result. Sometimes the change is too small to become a thought. You may only notice that your breathing drops slightly, or that your shoulders lower after the minute, or that the room feels harsher when you step back inside. These are not proofs. They are observations. Keep them modest. Modesty protects the truth. At the end, put your shoes back on slowly. Notice the difference. The shoe may feel comfortable. It may also feel like a filter returning. That is the point. Not to hate the filter. To remember that it is one. Before we close, subscribe and leave a like if you want the next episode to stay in this same style. Small gesture, real mechanism, no miracle claims. The body has many doors, and most of them are quieter than we were taught. There is a strange humility in touching grass. Not the humility people talk about when they want you to think less of yourself. A physical humility. The kind that begins when the body remembers it is not hovering above the earth in a private cloud of ideas. You can understand black holes, build cities, write code, manage money, edit images, argue about history, fear the future, regret the past, and still be corrected by a blade of grass under the foot. That correction is not intellectual. It does not debate you. It does not persuade you. It simply gives your skin an event that your body cannot outsource to language. Stephen Hawking spent his life thinking at scales where the human body seems almost impossibly small. Stars, singularities, time, the birth of the universe, the edge of what equations can say. But the awe in that kind of thinking does not erase the body. It makes the body more mysterious. A few pounds of nervous tissue inside a fragile organism can ask questions about infinity. A person with severe physical limits can still turn attention towards the cosmos. A life can be narrowed by disease and still refuse to be spiritually reduced to that narrowing. Most of us face a different narrowing, not the heroic kind, the ordinary kind. A narrowing made of rooms, shoes, screens, schedules, and surfaces so predictable that the body slowly stops being asked where it is. We call it convenience. Some of it is. We call it progress. Some of it is. But progress that removes contact must be answered by rituals of return, or else the organism begins to live as a theory of itself. Touching grass every day is not a cure, not a doctrine, not a personality, not a performance of natural living. It is a small refusal. A refusal to let the body become only a vehicle for the head. A refusal to let the world arrive only as images. A refusal to let comfort become numbness. A refusal to forget that presence is built from pressure, texture, temperature, weight, and the quiet resistance of the ground. You do not need to romanticize the grass. It is not pure. It is not magic. It is alive, ordinary, and indifferent. That may be why it helps. It does not flatter you. It does not optimize you. It does not ask for your opinion. It simply meets your skin with complexity. And for a nervous system drowning in abstractions, complexity that can be touched is a mercy. The grass says nothing. Your foot understands.